You are tuning into Engaging Walk. This week we will discuss the third episode of our dating series, The Art of Charm. Become more confident and attractive in the conversation. If you are new to the podcast, my name is Drake.
And my name is Rubie. We are passionate about building strong family connections.
We've seen how impactful a simple walk together can be. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast to stay up to date.
All right, so let's keep the conversation going as we go into the today content. The art of charm becomes more confident and attractive in the conversation is a popular concept in the realm of social dynamics and communication skill. So today we're going to focus on improving one's ability to engage in meaningful conversations and create positive connections with others. Now let's dive into the first question. What role does charm play in the dating process?
Okay, so before we get into that, we want to make a distinction between like superficial charm and which would be like artificial, like that. You know, you see a lot of these guys on like YouTube, Instagram who are like, you know, use these 3 hacks to, you know, make any woman fall in love with you kind of stuff. We're not talking about like that type of like superficial charm. We're talking about engaging in a conversation, and overall the main difference would be being authentic in the conversation and being charming in the conversation and allowing it to breathe and have meaningful dialogue that drives at deeper understanding, covering different topics. So first off, before we get into that, we want to make that clear distinction that we're not talking about artificial, superficial charm. We're talking about being authentic and being yourself in the conversation.
It's true, because it's the charm we're talking about is greater than a physical attraction, and it's just like how you carry yourself around the people. And even though, like, I have to admit that I went through some of social influencer about how to get attractive in terms of questions that you have. I think I forgot his name, but he's very legit. He said, like, how can I let the men ask deeper questions? I forgot his name, but he's pretty good. But at the same time, deep down in my heart, when I listen to all the tips and all the insights from a man perspective to to help the woman out there to become herself, I do feel like it's very helpful. But at the same time, I don't feel it's myself. Mm-hmm. So what we're trying to share today is just like different ways that we think from personal perspective, and also through research, that we feel like this help us to be who we are in the conversation.
Yeah. So the next point that we have on that is this is an overall just general skill that can really carry the conversation when let's say you're dating and you're talking to people, you're trying to figure out like, hey, is this person the right person for me? Can we have a lively, good discussion that, because let's say you're married, fast forward, you marry, mm-hmm. You're 5 years down the road, and you have those routines set in, and can you still have deep conversations and converse about your life and about like what your next steps are, plans to buy a new house, all those things, and have meaningful discussions about them? That is what you're trying to suss out during this period. Do we have an effective style of communication? And do I have the skills to draw that out during this time? So that is, I think, a more helpful way of looking at it. So that goes into this topic, which is the person yourself or the other person that you're having a conversation with knowledgeable and able to hold conversations about multiple topics. So you don't want to be a one-trick pony. You don't want to be able to just discuss politics all day. You're also going to, I think, in this day and age, need to know a bit about finance, a bit about real estate.
For sure, yeah.
A little bit about, global news, things that are happening in the world. Because let's say you meet somebody and you're like, oh, our conversations really mash up, Mm-hmm. What would really help is if you knew something about, even just a little bit about what that person does for work. And you never know like what that person's going to do for work. So let's say you
Yeah.
talk to someone, they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm a biologist," and you're like, "Oh man, I don't know anything about biology." You know, just even knowing a little bit can help drive to new understanding about like what they do for work and get the conversation going.
Yeah. So, and then the person, by talking to the person, or when you have a conversation, you can tell that the person invested in their life or not by expanding their knowledge. Just like back to like whatever that Drake just mentioned, like by talking to them, they may have a basic knowledge about something, but at least you can see they trying to educate themselves. They trying to get to know you. It's very common when you sit into the midst of a group of people, and then you're like, okay, I am in from education field, but then I found someone very attractive and he biologist, and I have no idea, or maybe biology is the worst subject to
Yeah.
me. So I mean, be authentic in that conversation. Like, hey, I love that, but I'm not very good friend with biology. Well, tell me, tell me more about biology. So why why you become biologist?
Hmm.
By authentic, no, like, okay, I'm not that deep in that topic, but hey, I'm interested in getting to know you and get to know that topic from your point of view. And I think that will create a connection instead of trying to fake it. Like, yeah, biology is cool. You start sharing things that you
Uh
not
huh.
very know. It's to biologists, which is they can tell like, okay, this is not authentic.
And another thing that you can ask is, you can drive at instead of like your knowledge about the topic. If you're more interested in the person as opposed to the topic, then you can drive at like how that person relates to their field, even if you don't know anything about it. You can ask questions like, "What drew you to biology? What do you love about your job?" And then was that something that you were interested in when you were a child, or is that like a new thing? Like, did you always want to be a biologist? Those questions will drive at a lot of things. They will drive at the person's passion, at the person's like true interest, their pursuit. Like, oh well, I just do this job because it pays really well.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I just learned a lot about you. You know,
Or
for better
my
or for worse.
my parent just told me to be a biologist or a doctor or a lawyer. So you can say how the person look at their life. Are they driven or not? Do they have purpose for life? And for me, as I mentioned before, I'm not sure you guys remember that for me, no matter what they do or who they are, the moment the person's so attractive is when the person driven with that passion, and they believe in whatever that they do in life impact other people. So it's never ended at them to them with them. They end it with the people around them, community. That's for me. And then they find so much joy doing that. That is so attractive to me.
Yeah, so I think this area of the conversation isn't just an analysis of like check marks, like, oh, this person has a job, this person makes a good income, this person has a car,
Yeah.
etc. It's more about like what makes them get up in the morning, what drove them to the point that they're at in their life now. And no one I think I've ever talked to is adverse to talking about their childhood. People love connecting, you know, like what they did when they were children to now. Like, oh yeah, I've always loved playing music. Like, I started playing music when I was a child. And if you get people talking about their past, then you not just know that is a guaranteed way of talking of establishing really good rapport, which we're gonna connect later on about building rapport. But that is a surefire way of doing it, especially during this stage in the conversation, because odds are not a lot of people are doing that. They're just doing those check mark questions. Okay, boom. Yep, I asked that question. I asked that question. This is way more authentic, way more organic.
And like if you find yourself like, oh, I don't really like have a purpose or something that driven or not that much of a passion compared to others, and that's fine. Like, it's the good thing is that we recognize it, and then I think, what does the next step look like? What do you want to do from there? Like, once I recognize that, how do you want to still be authentic for who you are and what you do? But how can I improve it that from there? How can I become more attractive? Not because I demand I will need it from that, but like, this is who I am. I encourage you to find out the purpose driven your life, the passion that, because without purpose, life is meaningless. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I didn't know that I want to become a teacher until I think sophomore. I was halfway into the business administration, and I can totally saw myself not, at that point, that I was not good with business, because I don't see myself a businesswoman at that time. I do see myself now, but at that time I was like, no, something else is missing, and that was to become an educator. And long story short, once I chose that path, and God, confirmed those things to me, I feel like yes. And I think there's a quote. Is it a blessing that you do what you love as a job? And so yes, I've every time as a teacher walk into the class, I feel such a blessing that I get to do things that I love, and I wish that you all, find the same thing like that in 2024. You know,
Mm-hmm.
let's move on to the next one.
Yeah, it was well said. I think, just to kind of put a pin on it, like this style of conversation isn't just for dating. Like this is something that you can use with your friends. This is something that you can use with your family members. You might already know these things about them, but this is just an all-around much better style of communication when you're in like a social setting. You obviously can't have all these super deep conversations all the time, but when it's time appropriate and you're discussing things, hashing things out, I think some families have a more tradition of this than others, but when you're in that setting, that's a great time to utilize these skills and get used to that style, so that when you do meet somebody that you're trying to get to know, potentially trying to date, that it'll just be a lot more natural.
Mm-hmm.
Which leads us to the next idea, which is you want to be a gentleman or a gentlewoman in the conversation. So a lot of people will say, this, but this is really difficult to do in the moment, which is actively listen. And a lot of this can just be turning off what you're trying to say and waiting for what you're trying to say. Because if you're just silent and just waiting for what you want to say, then that is a guaranteed way that you're not actively listening to what the person is saying. So shut that part off of your brain. Don't have something scripted just ready to go out just yet, but have that in mind, maybe like in the back of your mind, but actively listen and think about what the person is saying to you, so that you can have a real organic conversation, as opposed to, talking point A coming out, talking point B coming back, C, D, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to think of this as classical versus jazz, where in classical music, the music is written out. Everybody has their part. They're all joining in on the conversation in the exact way that they were all meant to do it. And of course, it's beautiful when it's arranged beautifully, but life isn't so neatly arranged. Life conversations reflect more like jazz, where, yeah, there's a certain topic, like they might be in a certain key, they might have like a certain structure that they're going to have in the conversation, but it's a lot more dynamic. It's a lot more listening to like what the other people are saying, reacting to it, and moving in different directions that would not have gone if it was just a classically arranged piece.
Yeah, and I want to add more on that, because sometimes, like for me, I also observe myself uh, during the conversation, that sometimes we tend to be so timid. We just says yes and no instead of bouncing back and forth the ideas, and that can be a conversation, cut off, because
Mm-hmm.
it's just like a yes no questions, and or you just feel shy or not comfortable in the conversation, and you just answer very short and sharp, and instead of let it flow back to the person, you just stop with you, and then people was like, you just pretty much just drop the ball
Yeah.
in the conversation, and it was like, okay, how do we gonna move next to to the next topic, and it's gonna all work, but yeah, let the conversation flow, ask back, ask about them, ask the person, be comfortable, and sometimes silence is okay in a conversation because, we need a break. We need, unless you guys know each other for so long and you have so many things to talk about, which is, I think it happened to us when we're dating, but through, yeah, we just talk, I don't know, for hours and, and or chat and type on chat because you were on deployment. It was like hours of chatting, and we just do different conversations, different questions, and yeah. So be authentic and don't be afraid. Don't shy away from who you are, and silence is okay in the conversation.
Yeah, I think actually, from my experience, that there's a lot of the times when you're having a good conversation and then things go quiet, and then our natural instinct can a lot of times be, I want to fill this with noise. I want to fill this with just a random question or something just to make the awkward silence go away. But sometimes if you just let it linger, I found that people say very profound things on the other end of silence because maybe they're just thinking. Maybe they're just thinking of like, do I want to talk about this? Do I want the conversation to go someplace deeper and talk about something that I don't talk about normally? And giving room for the silence in that area or in that moment can be really beneficial because you don't steer the conversation away from where it was gonna go. And again, this is not something that's just exclusive for dating. This is something that you can have with good friends too. I notice a lot of times on deployment, like, me and a good friend will be sitting in a room, like, and it's quiet for like 10 minutes, and they're like, you know what? I really miss about being home, and they'll just say something that, like, you just never thought of. And you're like, oh man, that is something that I really miss too, and I never realized how much I missed it until you brought it up, and then, your perspective changes and things like that. And it's all from just not filling the conversation with noise, and allowing people to think sometimes can be a really great thing, or even asking them, hey, what are you thinking about?
I think silence, like you said, like silence can be a way that you say like, okay, I'm comfortable enough that I don't haven't I don't have to talk to that person, and we're still communicating in silence, and allow the person to think, allow the person to take some space and just ready for the next one. So I think that's a good thing.
Okay, so we think we covered some of these topics, so we're going to move on to body language. So what do you think about body language?
I mean, it's a non-verbal conversation or communication that a person can be look very attractive when they carry themselves very well in terms of the posture, eye contact, that they look eyes to eye, they sit up straight, the shoulders open, sincere, and they even sometimes people can lean toward you because they're like, hey, I'm really interested in you, I want to talk about to you, or they deliberate cascadence in speaking. They share more information. They really engage into the conversation that you're about to conduct. So I think that is showing like, hey, this person is very authentic, or very want to talk to me, instead of looking to the phone, doing something else, and or their eyes looking, you can tell the eyes looking at a different person in the room. That can tell a lot, even though you say, oh, he into me, but reality check, his eyes somewhere else. So non-verbal communications very important too.
Yeah, I think my wife did a really good job of summing that up. There's that whole area of body language shows like where your true interest is. And, I think some of us can be more, what's the word, like skittish or distracted than others. But, that's just something that's why we're having this dialogue is, so being mindful of those things so that like your body language is saying what your heart is saying and being true to that. And then also just being aware. So that can help you.
It could be me sometimes. Sometimes I very alert with the surrounding. So especially if you take me to the if I'm sitting and heading to the door, everyone moving and going in and out, my eyes will like follow even though that I talk to you. So sometimes my friend remind you, Ruby, you just looking at the other person. I'm like, why are you talking to me? I'm like, oops, I'm sorry. Can we switch place? Because this is distracting me.
Yeah. Yeah, all those things can be helpful so that like, okay, well, I'm distracted or like this. Because I know for me, like my eyes are very sensitive from movement. And so yeah, that's something that I always keep in mind.
Wear sunglasses. Just kidding. No, I'll be authentic.
Okay, so next topic is going to be optimism in their being. So this I think is just like overall attitude that you don't want to come off as like negative, pessimistic, ending on a sour note, ending on something sad. I think if you're gonna, it's not bad to introduce sad topics or sad aspects of life into a conversation when you're getting to know somebody, but you might want to just like sandwich it, like maybe be like good thing, bad thing, and then good thing. That way you're not ending on like a pessimistic note. Or if you're talking about a serious topic that warrants like some tragedy or some despair to it, you find a way to turn it around and make it optimistic, hopeful. So let's say, for example, you're having a conversation about like what's going on in Israel right now, and the conversation, you find a lot of agreement. You find a lot of areas in which you agree on this topic, but end it with like optimism. But hopefully, things will start moving in a way that, the war will end pretty soon. I think that maybe this needs to happen before the war ends, but that'll be a great day. Like when just not just ending on the tragedy, but some type of optimism will help lighten the conversation.
Mm-hmm. And also being like polite and good manners, like when you, it just tie into the, what you were saying, optimism, that you can see the person sincere and empathy that toward a certain topic, and they show their thoughts and their kindness, because this is how you get to know the person. And it's I think it's nobody does not become charming without empathy and kindness. That's all we need. Yeah, and then of course, like we mentioned, it's a balance between the dominance behavior and dependence behavior. Do you want to share more about that?
Well, so in a conversation, especially if you're courting or potentially courting a woman, and you pick the place to eat, you're sitting down, you're having a nice conversation, and then things go quiet, for you're like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna let this silence go for a while, see if anything happens, and then nothing. Well, then like, okay, well, I'm gonna need to step in with a new topic for discussion. So sometimes that is like the way that you're gonna have to react to certain situations, because maybe the other person is like, okay, well, the silence has gone on for so long, like now it's awkward, I don't know what to say, especially that's why it sometimes will help to have topics that like that you want to talk about, or questions that you have in mind for the other person to try to get to know them better, and then keep track of what you've already talked about before and be like, okay, well, we already talked about what we do for work, we already talked about our home life, like where we live, all those kinds of things, where we grew up. but we haven't talked about pets. You know, how the other person feels about pets or animals or, you know, their favorite art, things like that. So don't panic during those times and just think about what else do I want to know about this person? What else, instead of just like, what else do I want to talk about? So those are ways that you can take, not control, but you can take command over the conversation and see, you know, and then move the conversation in a way that isn't dominant because you're allowing that space to breathe. You're allowing that space for the other person to bring in some topics that they might want to bring up. You know, so if you're constantly the one that's like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Where'd you grow up? That can feel a lot like an interrogation, and that can feel a lot like artificial, because I think that's where a lot of those, like, you know, those game guys, you know, get it wrong, where they're like, just ask this question, just ask that question. No, that's an interrogation, you know, and I think no one wants to be interrogated during a date. They, you know,
It could be feel like your interview.
yeah, like an interview. It's like, it's not an interview, it's a conversation. What
I
else?
mean, if you don't have a questions in your mind, you can use that, but then let it flow instead of, okay, I asked that question, now next one, you know, and even have a note on your phone. That's weird, but yeah, let it flow. If you don't have any questions in mind, that can help.
Yeah, or then you can even ask the person, like, hey, is there anything that you want to talk about, or like what's been on your mind lately, or you know, things like that will get to know the person more. Like, what do you like to do for fun? What do you love about, you know, again, what do you love about your work? Who's your favorite family member? What subject did you love the most in school when you were growing up? Like, those questions might start driving at deeper understanding, and people will reveal things about themselves during that time that you can ask further questions on and get even deeper understanding of who that person is. So, for example, they might reveal things like, oh, you know, like the winters where I'm from are so cold, like that, you know, we used to build snowmen. Oh, like where did you grow up? Where was, you know, are you from like New York? Are you from Maine, Montana? Oh yeah, I'm from Montana, you know, and then that also just shows how much you're paying attention in the conversation too. So again, the idea is not being dominant. The idea is being, bless you. The idea is being intentional and mindful about the conversation, so that as you're discussing, you're allowing all that room to breathe, but you're also not afraid to step in and steer the conversation in a direction that, if it's getting stagnant.
Yep. So those are the things that we, you know, personal collected to talk about the art of charm in relationship.
Yeah. So with that, we're gonna start wrapping up over here. We're getting next week. We're gonna be getting more into the do's and don'ts of dating, and Valentine's Day is in a couple of days, so we want to wish you guys a happy Valentine's Day. And we have a video coming out. Look for that either for tonight or tomorrow. We'll be having that posted. It's about our engaging walk that we did in Coronado Dog Beach with our dog Boba. She had like an amazing time.
Yeah, she now becomes, that's her new routines. That she used to be a sleeping girl. Now she's ready to go before the sunrise. So it's like, yes, let's go, daddy. So she excited and look forward to go to the dog beach every morning. And right there, she was just running, hanging out, playing with other dogs, and check out the water. She almost got carried away with the waves. I think 2 weeks ago. Oh no, sorry, last week.
Yeah, so maybe if you guys have seen on the news, we're from San Diego, and there was a lot of rain, like a torrential. I don't know if torrential is the right word. I think torrential is like intermittent, but there was just downpour after downpour, flooding, so much rainfall. I mean,
And then
Unbelievable.
and then we also have king tides, which is really strong and big waves coming in. So this girl with short legs of
Yeah.
corgis, she have no idea. All she wants to like have fun. So she saw a lab jumping over a big is it a sand dune?
Yeah, so there's
A
the
bar?
beach patrol created sand barriers. They
Oh,
pushed
sand barrier.
the sand back in order to block the tide from overtaking the entire beach. That's how crazy it was. So there's a big barrier of sand, and she jumped over it because she saw a lab. And now this lab was able to do it because the lab doesn't
He's a
have
lab.
short corgi legs. And he was able to jump over, get his ball, go into the ocean. I mean, it's actually kind of irresponsible, in my opinion, for the owner to be doing that because the current and the tide was just really, really strong. I mean, the lab didn't have anything happen, but you never know with like a rip current. You never know with like what might happen, especially when you have to jump over the barrier and get to the dog and then get out, which was what happened to me because she jumped in. And I was like, oh my goodness, this girl just jumped in. Now I got to go out and get her. So I had to jump in. My shoes got soaked. I got soaked. I had to like grab her and like throw her up so that she could get above the sand dune. But you can kind of see remnants of that in the video that we're going to be publishing. But she's actually super agile and she was able to climb up and down the sand dune without any issue. So if I had left her alone, I think she might have actually been able to do it, but
I think she freaked. Oh, I was not there. I just, heard it from Drake. But I think she was shocked, right? to
yeah,
see
because the wave was coming in fast. She was like, "Oh no, hello, help me!"
Yeah.
So we will post that video. For those of you in the area that haven't been to the Coronado Dog Beach, it's a really great place to take your dog. And for those of you around the country, I know we got some new listeners popping up all over the world. So thank you guys for tuning in. We got listeners from Asia coming in now, France, Japan, all over the United States, Canada. So we're really excited to have the podcast continue to grow. And I guess last we'll just end with this idea that pretty soon my wife will be giving birth. We're not,
Yes.
it'll probably be in about 4 weeks, but we're going to compile as much, episodes. And then if she's not feeling up for it, which would be totally understandable, then I'm going to start taking over and doing some solo episodes with her input. But maybe from the bedside, we can get the microphone over and have her coming in. But we'll see. We'll see how that will work. But we just want to let you guys know that will be coming up. We're really excited about that, and we're looking forward to doing some podcasts about being new parents.
All right. Well, thank you so much, you guys, for before we jump into the assignment. We just again thank you so much for taking your time of a day and listen to us, and it's just so much rewarding to see that you guys revisit us and then also share to the people that you think that is helpful and. Reach out to us, send us email, send us feedback, or even topic that you are interested in.
Absolutely.
We will love to do that.
Okay, yeah. So with that, we'll get into the assignment, which is what we want you guys to think about. What is your communication style in a conversation? And think about how you can authentically incorporate some of the techniques and ideas discussed today to improve your conversation skills. I think maybe a lot of you already have great conversation skills, but there's always a little fine tuning that we can do, especially when we get older, to
For sure.
Make sure that when we're talking with people that we're making the most out of it. And so with that, we want to also let you guys know to tune in to our next week's episode. We will have one posted
Next week.
Yeah, so next week. And we want to thank you guys for tuning in. Check us out you can listen to our podcasts on YouTube. We have videos posted on there. We have Instagram, Facebook, and we also have the podcast available on Spotify, Apple podcasts, and more.
All right, thank you for tuning in and making our podcast a part of your day. We hope that you can take our engaging walk and make it your own.
So again, stay tuned for next week's episode as we will discuss the fourth topic of our dating series for February, and we will discuss whether or not jealousy is healthy in a relationship.
Ooh.
So that'll also go along with some of the do's and don'ts in a relationship. And so don't forget to subscribe to our podcast to stay up to date. My name is Drake.
And my name is Rubie from Engaging Walk, and we are signing out. Bye.